Good morning and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Monday, the 24th of April. I'm recording this on Friday afternoon just after I finished watching Beau, the Fifth Column. I thought about evil in a religious context, and I have to say thank you to him. Not often does he touch on religion and Christianity, but when he does, he is so articulate and succinct, and I really appreciate his take on things. I also recognize that there are people out there who I don't know why they watch my videos, if they feel so strongly about this, but they don't believe that I really am an Anglican priest, a priest at all, because they say that the Bible, this book, is clear that women are not called to have ministry roles. I would argue that though that's St. Paul who says that once in a while. But Jesus himself never said that. As a matter of fact, if you look in the 20th chapter of John, the Gospel of John, the Easter story, Jesus himself tells Mary Magdalene to be the first to go and tell the other disciples that he has risen. Mary Magdalene was indeed the first apostle, and she was a woman. So, yeah, women can preach the gospel, and there are some women out there who are absolutely fantastic at it. I'm not one of them. I am not the world's greatest preacher, but there are some absolutely phenomenal female preachers out there, and I do hope you avail yourself to them. One of them is Nadia Boltweber from the Lutheran Church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. She's an amazing, amazing preacher. I really, really do want to touch on the fact that Beau is talking about evil in a Christian context, in a religious context, because it does exist, and however we talk about evil, however we want to acknowledge it. First of all, I think it's important that we acknowledge it. Those things of which we are ignorant are the things that can cause us the most harm. And if we say evil doesn't exist, or we say, well, we think it exists, but it's bad, so we're not going to talk about it, we're not going to think about it, you make yourself, I think, the most vulnerable for being hit by it. I think it's really important that we make ourselves knowledgeable, that we pay attention. And I really do recommend everybody read the Bible. I don't recommend reading it front cover to back cover, but do a little bit of research. Find out which books were written when, which ones are lumped together, which ones make the most sense. Maybe read them in order of when they were written, the chronological order, because they're not in chronological order in the Bible. I really do recommend you read it with an open mind, recognizing it is not a roadmap. It is not an encyclopedia or a dictionary. It is not a completely truth-telling thing. It speaks truth, but it speaks truth through letters, allegories, stories, parables, history lessons, prophecy, poetry. Like it's not meant to be pick it up and this is what this means. Absolutely. And certainly not today. The Bible has to be read in context, acknowledging who it was written for. And then we do the work of how can we then take that message that was written for people 6,000 years ago and apply it to our lives. How is it applicable? But we have to use our common sense. We have to use our brains. Part of that is to read what the Great Commandment is. Beau referred to it. I'm going to share the version of the Great Commandment from the 22nd Gospel of Matthew, verse 34 to 40. When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? He said to them, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. The law and the prophets in here. When we figure out those two things, everything else kind of falls together. So think of it as your closet at home and all of your clothing. When you get up in the morning, you might have pajamas on, but in order to put on your clothing for the day, you have to take those off. You stand there in all your naked splendor and you prepare to layer onto yourself those things that you need for your day. When we present ourselves before God, we present ourselves, as Christians anyway, willing to do those two things, to love the Lord our God with all our, as he says here, with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind. So the first thing we need to do, all our heart, all of who we are, every intention we have, every thought we have, Everything we're doing, everything we choose to do, we got to love God first. If we love God first, then the rest falls into place. And in particular, that part, the third part, with all your mind. I talked about this last Sunday maybe, 2 Sundays ago maybe. The fact that we are told, as Anglicans anyway, we are not expected to listen to the church and the church's teachings and the teachers in the church and hear what they say as if it's pablum, as if we're being spoon-fed, our nutrition in ways that's palatable for even the youngest and most childish mind. We are meant to chew on these things, to think about them, to use the reason that God gave a green-eyed goose, that we can hear and understand what it is God is saying to us in this context, in our context. So we are called to love the Lord our God with all our heart, all our soul, and all our mind. Then we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. And this is where, we start looking through our closet. We love in God with all of who we are, heart, mind, and soul. And then we think, how do we go about my day? So then we add the clothing onto ourselves, the undergarments, those things that we put on that no one else sees for the most part. We put them on because they're foundational. We love our neighbor as ourselves. I'm going to focus on that for a second. Love our neighbors as we love ourselves. How do we love ourselves? If we love God in the best and most beautiful way, then it's really difficult to hate ourselves. If what we're emanating out of us toward God is love, and we know that God loves us, then we are being received in love. And that means that we love ourselves. We treat ourselves with dignity and respect. Hence, we put on those undergarments, those foundational things that hold us together and keep us modest. They keep our dignity together. We love ourselves. And then when we love ourselves, we love our neighbors. If we don't like ourselves, we're not going to treat our neighbors very well. It's very difficult to treat someone else well when you don't treat yourself well. But we need to learn to love ourselves. And then when we love ourselves, then we can love our neighbor. But Jesus does not say who our neighbor is here. He talks later. He talks about who the neighbor is about in the Good Samaritan passage, which I spoke of last week. And the idea that we are called to love our neighbors, and our neighbors, Jesus doesn't say your neighbor is straight, your neighbor is white, your neighbor is a man. Jesus says love your neighbors. And your neighbor is whoever you're looking at, whoever you live beside, whoever you work with, whoever you run into at the grocery store or sit beside on the bus. Your neighbor is everyone else around you who isn't you, and you are called to love them. Now, the church, over the years, in even the Anglican Church, we make mistakes, but all of the churches, we have not done this very well. There have been times when we have not modeled loving our neighbors very well, and we have allowed evil to creep in and plant itself within our communities. That is real. I have to be honest. Evil exists within church communities, the same way it exists in hockey clubs and the Kinsman Club and the library group, and wherever people are, humanity is, evil will be present. The question is, how do we deal with evil? Like I said earlier, if we pretend that evil doesn't exist, then we give ourselves permission to be open to, we're vulnerable to the possibilities of it coming at us. If I say evil doesn't exist, then I allow people, I acknowledge, I'm not recognizing that people can hurt me. They can do evil things to me, because if I don't acknowledge it as evil, then I don't know how to handle it. I don't even recognize it when it comes. But if I at least have the guts and I have the mind, the reason to realize that evil is real, and as Beau said, if evil is the opposite of good, we all know that the opposite of good exists. We all know that we all participate in the opposite of good from time to time. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge it, because if we acknowledge that evil exists, then we are better able to eradicate it, to recognize it when it starts to happen. And that absolutely means that we don't say that another group is hating. The moment we go start saying that this group is hating other people, and I do it myself, I know that, and as the only way I can name another group as hating is to recognize my own discomfort with them. And do that work of recognizing that if I am feeling like they are hateful, if I believe, like for instance, I'm going to use the Ku Klux Klan as an example. If I believe that what they are doing is hateful, it doesn't mean that I am hating. As I can't hate them. I am not called to hate them. I am called to love my enemy. I am called to love them, pray for them, want them to become better, establish ways that I can help them to find a new way that is not hateful. The only way that we can truly fight hate is through love. And that means sitting down with people and talking to them and asking them questions. Why do you feel that way? What is it? If you're saying it's that God says I can hate because it's in the Bible, show it to me. Show me, not with one verse here or there, but show me where it is in this book that God says it's okay to hate. It's okay to vilify someone else because they are different than I am. It's okay to feel threatened by them because they are different than I am. We are called to understand them. We are called to reach out and have conversations and to understand what's happening. And when people throw at me things like individual lines from like Leviticus or from some of Paul's writings, and I emphasize some of Paul's writings, I would like them to then come back with the other context, do the research. When Paul says this in Romans, what was happening within the Roman world that he was responding to? Was he really responding to what you're talking about in the context in which you're speaking? Or was he responding to something that was happening in the community that was not right? That people weren't treating each other with love. I am intentionally wearing this sweatshirt. I wore it for my last video on Friday. Let's get rid of the strings here. It says Brescia University College. And if you've never heard of it, I really recommend you look it up. Brescia University College, Brescia College when I went, is my undergraduate, where I did my undergraduate work. And it is, I believe it's the only women's college in Canada, degree granting body. And it's run by the Ursuline sisters, and it is Roman Catholic. And I'm not Roman Catholic. And yet they let me in, which was great. But the thing is, it was such an incredible atmosphere. It was a place where women from around the world came to get a solid undergraduate university degree, where they came and they had small class sizes, where we were encouraged to be able to have debate and ask questions and really put forward our honest questions and our honest answers to talk about those things. We knew we were prayed for by the sisters and by the staff at the university college. But more importantly, we knew that we were accepted as we were. You cannot get hundreds of women into a college or university setting and not have any women who are lesbian. It defies all odds, even though it was Roman Catholic. You see, when I applied to university, they didn't ask me, am I gay or straight? They asked me what my grades were. How did I do? Why did I want to go to that university? That wasn't even a question. The fact is that this Brescia University College, is a place where I learned not just tolerance, but I learned love. And I learned how to think critically. And I learned to realize that whether I am in a Christian or a religious context or not, as a person, I am called to respect everyone with dignity and respect. To treat them as if they're a child of God. And because they are a child of God, they are beautiful, just as they are. And I didn't learn that because they taught me religious classes. I learned that because I sat through psychology classes and sociology classes and lots of English language and literature courses and French and other things. Critical thinking, critical reasoning was one of them, where they taught us how to think. They taught us how to use our minds. They taught us how to truly live with all of our heart, mind, body, and soul. And they really did teach us about what it is to love your neighbor. Evil does exist, and if we ignore it, we will be bound to deal with it in ways we never anticipated. But when we recognize it, especially within a religious or Christian context, then we have the ability to deal with it. And the best way to deal with evil is to love. It is to love. And one of the best places to learn about what real love is to read this book and to read other religious texts, the Quran, the Torah, other things that teach the Bhagavad Gita, other things that teach us about how we are to live as human beings, because that's what they're filled with. They're filled with ideas and stories and rules about how we are to treat one another, how we are to reach out to one another, that we can support one another and not rip each other down. we need to stop hating. We need to start loving. And we need to recognize that in order for us to love everyone else, we need to feel that we are loved by, in my mind, like from my perspective, by God, for the higher power or the universe or however it is, whoever or whatever it is you turn to that is beyond you, if you recognize that you are not the center of the universe. To feel that love and empowerment that comes with that. And then to allow yourself to learn to love yourself. And that can be hard. And it doesn't have to be perfect. But once you realize that you're at least trying to love yourself, it makes loving your neighbor so much easier. So I really do encourage you to read and to research and figure out context. And then look at yourself and realize that the way you treat other people is kind of like clothing yourself for the day, getting up in the morning as you are, naked as the day you were born, and then just making the decisions that are the clothing of your life. Those foundational things like your bra and your underwear, your t-shirt, your undershirt, or your hose or your socks, those things that we put on that they cover up the basics. And those are the things that we carry and we say, this is absolutely foundational to who I am. And then the clothing we choose, the blue sweatshirt or the flowery, lovely caftan or the tuxedo or tails that we decide to wear for our outing, those are the things we share with the world. Choose to be beautiful. Choose carefully from your wardrobe of possibilities. Doll yourself up in those things which show life to be good. And if you have those things that only bring evil and darkness with you, hanging in your closet, pitch them out. Don't even take them to Goodwill. Burn them in the backyard. You don't need them. Clothe yourself with goodness. Clothe yourself with love. And then go out and share that love with your neighbors. And you'll be amazed at how you feel when they share their love for you as well. God bless you. And thank you for being discerning enough to think about evil and then work hard to build up with the good. God bless you. I will see you again tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachael.